From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, the Department of Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs proudly presents Reflections on the Importance of Male Leadership in the Family and Society, a conversation with Benjamin Ortega and hosted by Christian Grenham.
Welcome to this year's International Men's Day program. With me, I have Mr. Benjamin Ortega, better yet known to many of his friends as Benny. Benny the Bull, I guess. This year we'll be talking about all things men related. I think some of you might be surprised to know that we have an International Men's Day on today, November 19th. The root of International Men's Day is very close to many of us in the Caribbean, as it came from a Dr. Tuklok Singh, history professor at the University of the West Indies.
Yes.
Anyway, I would like to start our conversation with Mr. Benjamin Ortega. Benny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on the program, and I hope to share some good thoughts for the men and women we have out there in St. Martin today.
Great. So I'm just going to jump straight right into it. Just a brief introduction about yourself before we get to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, actually, the first time somebody called me Benny the Bull.
Oh.
But that's a new one. That's a new one. Okay.
But I got to know I'm a basketball fan.
Yes,
so,
exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. I remember. But yeah, so you already said my name is Benjamin Ortega, formerly also known in the community as Benny. Many people call me Benji as well, but I prefer still Benny. I grew up in St. Peter's most of my life. Went to Middle Peters College before leaving in the early 90s to go to the Netherlands to study. I stayed there for quite a while. I'm going to say how long, which I obtained my degree in civil engineering. I worked for quite a while. I did some good things. Started one of my first business in the Netherlands as well. I'm known to be a people's person, but also I like to take on different challenges. Not only being an engineer, but also I delved in marketing and business in general. These days, I came back to St. Martin in 2007. I worked for government for a while for the from the department, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about St. Martin and things that I didn't know prior to going to the Netherlands. I learned a lot in that time frame. But these days I'm working at the Port of St. Martin. I'm the facility manager, in short, facility planning and maintenance manager, but facility manager in short. I own some small businesses. I believe in micro business, spreading your wealth, and to ensure that you could give something back to the community. I have also sat on the board of the Chamber of Commerce for quite some years, and I'm known also to be the past president, and I continue to empower young men and women in St. Martin.
Right. So, Benny, why do you think International Men's Day is something that should be celebrated?
Well, being a man myself, and we're going to get into the context of what does a man mean. Being a man myself, being a contributor to society, I think it's important that we stand still by our heroes. Now, of course, we have more than only male heroes in our society, but I think it's good that we honor those that went before us, that able to teach us what we are doing today. And a lady will hopefully affiliate herself with a female hero. Yeah. But I find it important to look at my male heroes and say, that is what I aspire to be as well. And I'm hoping that I could be that male hero for someone else coming up, a young man or a young lady, looking at life in a different way. So it's important to stand still sometimes to those things that we quite often forgot. A little joke I'm going to tell you, many times when preparing for this meeting, we always talk about Mother's Day. And Mother's Day is very, very, across the world, is really grand. It's a big thing. It is, I think, the second money making after Christmas.
Oh, wow, okay.
But Father's Day, you give the boxer shot, the socks,
the socks,
the dinner. Yeah. So, dads and fathers, and you don't have to be a biological father to celebrate Father's Day, is my humble opinion. But they need a little sunshine now and then as well. Yeah, so hence why.
So, piggybacking on something that you said about being a man, what do you consider being a man to be? Because in this ever-changing society that we're living in, boundaries are being pushed of what is considered a man, right?
Yeah.
So what is your definition of a man, or do you think the definition of a man is a dynamic definition, or is it very static as this is what a man is, and there shouldn't be pushed back against that?
You know, every time I have this conversation, and believe you not, it is more than often, right? So every time I have this conversation about the definition of a man, it strikes up a lot of sentiment, especially by men, and the different types. So let's go back to the core definition of a man. A man is the male version of a female, right? You know, that's masculine. He has certain genitals that contribute to him being a man.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, if you look, especially in our Caribbean society or in the African world, you talk about the man. It's either the man of the tribe, the head of the tribe, the head of the household. But then young men have this thing we call the rite of passage. So when you go from being a boy to a young man and then becoming a man, there's certain stages in your life that depicts that, and certain characteristics. You get beard, although I don't have as much as you, Christian. But you know,
this just
don't tell me that beef.
No. But this just came in. I'm 32 now. This just came in like 26, 27. So it took a while.
Well, I'll say I'm 47, and I still hope to get something like that. You know, that I didn't still cheap. But you know, so these are the characteristics of a man, as we normally say. But is it? You know, what is a man? Now, if you go into the definition, like looking at the psyche of it, we often mix the concept of being a man as a caretaker or caregiver. This one is taking care of your family, and you know, he has to show certain manly behavior, the manlyhood, and so forth. And that is the definition that is changing within society. And I'm not going to get into the LBGT or LBGTQ society or whatever, but they are, and you still have men when it comes to, and a man when it comes to that perspective as well.
Yeah.
So just looking at the general part of being a man, a male version within society, within the context of his origin. Yeah.
Before I get into the role of what being a man is, there are notions of alpha male, beta male.
Yeah.
And in the society that we live in, that we're ever present in, when you grow up, you hear, don't cry, be a man. So there's a negative light to men that are perceived as beta males.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for an individual that might feel as though that they are beta male and they have no place in this?
Well, that's exactly what I was alluding to in the first part of the definition of being a man.
Yeah.
I think those type of societal definitions actually put pressure on the male or the man figure that he has to fit in. You know, when we were younger, there was this drive against peer pressure. You know, especially when you're adolescent, in your teenage years, peer pressure as you're trying to figure out who you are is something that is very influential at you. You know, what you see in your surroundings is actually many times you adapt as the normal of the norm. Now, we as grown-ups have that same thing. So now we are being peer pressured as to you have on a pink shirt.
Yeah.
I love pink, as you can see, right? Back in the days, wearing pink as a man was taboo. You crazy? You can't have on that. You are not that stereotype figure that we look up to as being a man.
Yeah.
Now, again, as we evolve as people within not only our society, within the Caribbean society, but in St. Martin in general, being open to everything, you know, social media, TV platforms or whatever have you, we are open to a lot of things. So those are influences that are changing us, changing the definition, changing how we look at each other. and at times it put a negative connotation on what a man's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, in my humble, a lot of words, what is a man? A person of a male gender that that has a role within his society, within his community that he has to fulfill.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I don't believe in social media that much. Everybody always tell me, say social media is not that social. I love this.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important that if you are whomever you are in your community, that you remain to have this.
Yeah.
And this helps us to become new and good men within our world.
So you mentioned about social media, right? And the negative tropes or the negative stereotypes that come out of social media, especially for men. There's always been this pandemic for men where they suffer from depression at a higher rate than our female counterparts. They suffer from our suicide rates are higher. Do you believe that now with social media that has made that issue even more prevalent within society, or do you believe that because we lack men in general, boys going into young men, lack guidance from other men? Because you also said that we learn from each other, right?
Correct.
So you see a man being a man, you just assume that this is how you're a man. But if you take out that man out of that role, there's a gap, there's a void, and then you no longer know. You just go, right?
Yeah.
So long question short. Do you believe, so I will go back, do you believe that social media has put extra pressure on what it is to be a man, and which leads to higher suicide rates, more depression within men leaving families because of I can't deal with this anymore, so the best thing for me to do is just leave?
You're answering actually the question already for me. I'm gonna say like this, and that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
By you answering the question, I think all of us have that notion, and we are also subject to peer pressure as being men, as being adults. Now, I'm going to go just one step back in that whole discussion we just had, right? So, as society is changing, we are seeing the family role is changing as well. Coming back, and many things that I would say, I would try to bring reference to what I've said or will say.
Okay.
So, if the family role is changing, back in the days, again, comparing to 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was the common notion that a family had to have a mother, a father, children, right? Or at least those two figures within the household.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's because of economic crisis, we went through that economic crisis in the 50s and so on, but whether because of economic crisis now, you see that the mother and the father are working.
Yeah.
Because of female and the women's generation of empowerment, which is a very good thing. I mean, I love my mom, and my mom was a caretaker for many years, and then she started to work, and you saw her change as well because it empowered her, right? And my sisters, my sister has her business and she works as well, and both of them are thriving career women in our society. So that now, the woman is no longer at home, or does not have to be at home anymore. I'm going to go even further. The woman don't need the man to take care of her in the household anymore. So that general sense of a family or a family's household between a man and a woman, that is less than what it was, a lot less.
Yeah.
So now, growing up for a young lady or for a young man, not having both parents around or whatever, tend to look at possibly social media, if not directly involved, of seeing what they are should be involved with on a daily basis. Now, keep in mind, listeners and viewers, I'm not a psychologist. I am nowhere by far a professional in this.
Yeah.
It's just based on my opinion and having a lot of meetings with men and trying to empower and trying to get from them what they feel, right? So now that whole thing has changed. So if you're looking at the role of the young man coming up, he's 13, 14, He's starting to, develop in certain ways. He's possibly going to look at young ladies, or he start to venture out. Who does he have to look to see? Who's going to give him that guidance?
Yeah.
Treat a woman with respect. Bring her a flower. Don't curse her. You have to. You look at social media, with all due respect, the music industry, the film industry has changed dramatically in comparisons to how it was back in the days. The social and the stereotyping of especially black men has changed. It's okay to be that type. It's okay to act that certain way. So if there's a void of a male figure within the household or in the community at large, the young man would then take that pressure, that peer pressure, whether he's seen it as positive peer pressure because he want to learn to be a rapper, and he's gonna mimic that.
Yeah.
And not saying that all rappers are like that, because I know some really good male influence, good rappers and persons within our community as well.
Yeah.
So, but that is something that you see now. Social media is teaching our children certain things that the male figure in their environment should be teaching them.
Yeah.
So if they don't have that uncle, that big brother, or that nephew, or whatever have you, that could show them the right way, they tend to look at social media. They tend to look at something that is cool.
Yeah.
And something is cool is always better than seeing a stuffy guy in a jacket and telling you shouldn't be doing that because that ain't cool.
Yeah.
So those are the things I think have a great influence on our youngsters nowadays. And I hope that there's some sort of shift, that these type of programs, that we could understand that I grew up in St. Peter's, we fight too, we play basketball and it was rough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does not make you to be that person. It doesn't make you to act in that certain way. I think you all have a role in life to play, and we should honor that.
So what is your advice to a young man that may be looking at this program, that is becoming self-aware that he might not have positive male role models in his life? His peers aren't really that positive either. What would be your advice to him trying to become a leader within his peer group, and then eventually as a young man into an adult?
They always say that leaders are not made, they are born. Right? Everyone has it in them. It's, again, my humble opinion, to become a leader. You might not become the leader of your group, you might not become the leader of your class, but you become a leader in your own world, right? So someone like that, we all are born with the understanding between right and wrong. When you cause that bad word, it's wrong.
Yeah.
When you do that wrong thing, it is wrong. When you treat a person in a certain way, it is wrong. Let your conscience be your guide. Don't be afraid. And for those out there that have made mistakes, we all could learn from our mistakes. We all should learn from our mistakes. So it's never too late to click and said, it's time for me to take the Benny Bull by the horn and ensure that I become a upstanding citizen. Just follow your intuition and be that role model for someone. Now, again, many times we look at certain societal classes as to who determines, the one from the lower class, for lack of better understanding, those are the bad boys and the bad girls. In the upper class, those are the upstanding. It is not so.
Yeah.
Someone from any class could be a leader to an upper class or lower class, to whomever.
Yeah.
It is how you carry yourself in life, how you want and what you want for your direct surroundings. So keep that in mind.
So, and I think maybe I asked this already, or you've addressed it. What might discourage a young man from participating in his society or within his peer group as a leader?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very personal question for the person, because again, we can't all be doctors and lawyers. We have to be barmen, we have to be sanitation workers, we have to be laborers as well to keep society rolling. So what could discourage someone is that, yeah, but I am just that person. I ain't from that good family. I ain't from that art. And those are the societal pressures that I talked about that could deter me from seeing myself in a leadership position.
Yeah.
Wherever you came from does not depict where you're going to end up. And although it is something very hard to understand when you're in it, and when things are hard, and when you have to fight to survive, because if you want to learn to play basketball, and the bigger boys on the block is bullying you, you need to show that you are a man or a young man coming up, that you can stand your own ground. That ain't easy. But it does not mean that you can't be their leader neither. Because many young men back in my days, whom we had, everybody know the Ortegas, we wasn't easy. Me and my brothers, it wasn't easy. But we feel we were righteous. And then after so much years of being away, 20-something years, and then you come back and then you meet this, hey, what's going on, chap? Hey, you remember how that fight was bad? But then we had that mutual respect for each other because we surpassed that. We understood that was a moment in our life. And now we are leaders in our community trying to ensure that our young men around us get the equal opportunity that we could have received as well.
So I'm going to ask a very personal question. Because you mentioned your mother, she was a caregiver, then she went into the workforce. Were you a part of a single parent family household, or were you?
No, we grew up as a dual. Okay. Luckily and fortunately for that, although my parents later divorced, unfortunately. But it does not take away that those two had the same role, and they were fulfilling that role, whether they were together or apart. And it's important, and that's again, not having I would say the social peer pressures that we have possibly today, because we are in tune with everything in the world. It was easier for us. I remember a very good friend of mine telling me a story on report day. We always dread that report day because those grades had to be on point. Now his mom and dad were divorced and separated for many years. But every report day, they will pick up one or the other, and in the car, him and his brother, the mother and the father in front. Remember, the mother and father are not together. And when they had a bad mark, and then give a little monkey to your mother, your father would just turn around and watch him. It doesn't have to be together to continue your role. So, so again, my personal thing, we were fortunate that our mom and dad was there for us at all times. But we have seen others in situations that they were separated, but yet they held that strong bond and the role that a man needed to play.
So there's two questions I want to ask you before we wrap up. So 3 books that impacted who you are as a young man. I'll say that because you're still in your 40s, right? As a young man, so that's part A. Well, part B, and then part A is what impacted you to become the person you are today? Because I always think there's a defining moment where something happened in your life and you're like, no, I gotta shape up.
It was a journey. It was a journey that I think I went through from since I was a young man. I did a lot. I got a lot on these shoulders. As I said, I'm an engineer. But before that, I was a barber. Okay. I can remember packing bags in food center.
Okay, that's a long time.
And that's a long time ago. And my dad bringing me there and saying, listen, you want to work? This way you're going to start. You're going to be humble. You understand that everything you want in life, you need to work for it. So if I look at those lessons that I learned over the years and being the person that I am today and calling myself a micro entrepreneur or specialist in micro entrepreneurship, I learned from those lessons, working hard from a young age and having the guidance from strong men and women around me, showing me that there's always a difference. That comes out as well, the books. understanding that there's one book, I'm going to mention all three, but there's one book I always say that has impacted me at a later age in life. And it taught me about differences, and I can't remember the author, but it's the 5 love languages.
Okay, yeah.
Right, there's another book on him that I started to read, but didn't finish it yet. But and that book, it showed you if you want to communicate with somebody, you need to understand who you're sitting with. You need to understand the psyche of that person and understand your own. So self-searching and self-understanding is very important. And then you're able to match each other and see what's your love language versus my love language. Not literally the love language, but understanding who's sitting over you and what you're communicating.
There's like words of affirmation, gifts given, etc.
So those are things I think that change and shape me. If you're looking at persons within society, because we spoke about it just before we started, and I remain to say that my father, he's now passed almost a year, and he was always my best friend, and he was a plumber. We call it the laborer of society, but he worked hard for everything that he received, and he taught us, all of us, that. And I look at someone else like a person that I honor as well, which is our Honorable Lieutenant Governor, Dr. Eugene Holiday. Comes from a well-established family, but a hard-working family. I know many of his brothers and sisters, and to see that son of a soil in such a position only gives me, and it should give others, the same drive to accomplish. I doubt that when he was growing up, he's a boy going to become the governor of St. Martin one day.
But I'm pretty sure he knew, though, because
he knew his role.
You manifest what.
And for him, he might not remember, but in a meeting that we had when he was at the airport, and I was an engineer, he was there around the table, and I didn't know the road name. So I said, that's a nightclub establishment road name. He said, young man, that road has a name. And the name he mentioned what the name was, and he said, you should always know what you're talking about. So he gave me that, and it empowered me to learn more about our environment as well. So, and there's others out there in St. Martin that are doing good work, giving back to the community. A good friend of mine is Christopher Waver. I'm following him, and he's also doing whatever if it's politics or whatever, he is, and his father as well, has been, in the clubs and giving back to the community. And I think that is important, regardless to what level yet you are on within your society, you give back to your society.
So I want to go back into something that you said earlier in our conversation about men and their role within society. You've also mentioned that women don't need a man anymore, right? So men are found in a precarious position of what it is do I do, and then you see these role reversals of men. What is your opinion on that, and do you find that is something okay?
Well, it comes back to what I was mentioning. I briefly touched on it with regards to the caretaker and the caregiver role. I'm going, because when I said we, I am part of a men's group, and we have our deliberations quite often on societal matters, whether it's taxations or whatever have you. And this came up as well. So we define within that men's group discussion, the difference between the caretaker and the caregiver. Allow me. So the caregiver is normally a person that gives support, a nurse, someone who takes care of the elderly or a health-deprived person or even babies. And when the caretaker now was always the gardener, the one that fixes things around. So we said, okay, the caregiver was the woman's role, and the caretaker was the man's role, right? So that's how we define those two. Now imagine, coming back again to the societal changes that we spoke about. The caregiver and the caretaker role are merging. So is a man less of a man because he is not providing for his family, or that he take up the caregiver role, staying home, taking care of the offspring, the young ones, or taking care of washing the dishes? Is he less of a man because of that?
Yeah.
Or if both parents, or both within the family or within the relationship, are working, who defines that the woman is the caregiver, and who defines that the man is the caretaker? So those things are things that we have noted and that are merging in our societal changes that cause confusion. And I say with all due respect, we here in the Caribbean, other than respecting our grandmothers, right, that's a whole different ballgame discussion.
Most definitely.
But with the man and the female, the man and the woman within the relationship, that tug of war. I mean, I don't like to wash dishes.
Yeah.
Right? The first chance I got, I bought a dishwasher.
Okay.
Right? But it doesn't make that when you come home from work that you can't wash dishes. No, I'm washing dishes because I find this and this. Or I'm cooking. So there's where the pressures come, and then the youngsters are seeing this as well. It's like, okay, but daddy's role is to bring home the cheese.
Yeah.
And mommy's role is to cut the cheese and share it. No, that is changing. And especially if you do not have a one or a double household a family, then you could become a little bit confusing. Remember, again, I'm not a professional when it comes to this. It's just based on our discussion we're having. So those are the things that we see with regards to changes in our environment that is adding a certain type of behavioral change or expectations, then rather, towards our youngsters as to what they're supposed to look at those roles as.
Yeah. So, do you think, as a man, those that ambiguity between roles, between a man, what we taught as formerly as a man's job to do and formerly as a woman's job to do, and that meshing of those two roles now, do you think that contributes, in your observation in St. Martin, for example, do you think that contributes to poor mental health in men? That confusion of what the role is?
Well, it's a yes or no question, because if we compare again, because everything is a comparisons to something, right? If we compare now, men's mental health is ever so more on the table as a discussion point than it used to be. So now we are trying to understand the definitions about mental health, about men's mental health and men's health in general. So because it becomes more of a discussion point is where now we are able to define the confusions within the discussion point.
Yeah.
Not that there is confusion within the discussion point, we are able to define it more.
Yeah.
But I do find that because we have changed and looking at it's okay to wear pink, it's okay to have a discussion, it's okay to seek professional help, it's okay to go and check your prostate, because these are things that before a man don't do that.
Exactly.
We don't cry.
Yeah.
We don't talk about our personal health.
Yeah.
We don't talk about our personal feelings. But today, the only reason that we're having it as a clash is because we are talking about it.
Yeah.
And more, whichever their generation in your society talking about it. You know, the older ones,
Yeah.
those that are in the 60s and in the 50s that are experiencing prostate issues,
Yeah.
talking about it more. When they were young men like you and I,
Yeah.
they were not talking about it. That's why now it's for them a taboo
Yeah.
that has been broken.
Yeah.
So I think that is a healthy, those are the positive changes that we see. But because of those positive changes, it becomes more of a clash, of a discussion. But
Okay.
that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah. So you mentioned quite a few times during our discussion that you're part of a men's group.
Yes.
What was the reasoning behind forming a men's group?
That's a long story.
Okay.
But in short, I mentioned about the journey. You know,
Yeah.
we all have a journey to go through. And returning to St. Martin, I could recall my first work day. And I had on a pretty shirt and a pretty tie. And my boss, I don't want to mention his name, called me into the office. He said, "Listen here, Benny. You can't have that."
You say you work in Vromi?
Yeah. So they understand that environment. That pretty short, too tight, the tight, lose it. So it was still, and I was like, oh my gosh, coming from a very metropolitan environment to back to St. Martin, that it wasn't cool to dress up too nice in a technical environment. So I had that culture shock for a couple of years. Yeah. So now later on, you I'd say, hey, this is Benny. He does wear tight shorts. Yeah. Even though he belly a little big, he does wear tight shorts, right? So and people start to adapt to me. So I adapting to them, and they adapting to me, and those were the certain changes that I went through, and I was looking and searching for that pair and those pairs that were going through the same thing. So in our group, we have young to older. I don't say old because they get upset. And we reach out to each other and we help each other in that perspective, because we all have a role in the society that we fulfill. And we found it, and it just like coincidentally just grew together. I also help young men out there. First started with the business when I got on the chamber. People reaching out to you saying, I have this business idea, I want to talk to you. And then before you know it, you're meeting with this person often. And that's a coaching. And then I started learning about, because this person, although younger than I was, he was making more money than I was and having more ideas. Now I'm coaching him, but he has to be coaching me. So you see how they are helping each other. So in that, it kind of self-grew to where it is today. And I must say I'm very thankful for them, because we handle some hot topics.
So do you think the men's group is because when we talk about counseling and seeking help for things that we think are taboo, do you think having a men's group is a segue into saying, okay, well, I'm talking to these men that are going through similar experiences. It's sort of a coping mechanism, but I do think I might need a little bit more help. Do you think the men's group is a perfect place to feel safe, to then make that next step and say, okay, well, I need more professional help?
Yes. It's even so much exactly what you said, but it's not so much for us seeking professional help, but we all represent a group in our society, right? In our environment. So if we are coming together as a group, let's say for numbers' sake, it's 10 of us. And each one of us have 10 persons that we congregate with on a frequent basis. Automatically, we're touching 100 people. So that is the power of coming together. So we don't always have to discuss our personal thing, but we could discuss things that is in our environment that needs touching. We talk about men's mental health, but drug use, alcohol abuse. I don't know if one could remember, but I was also together with Safe Haven. I signed a MOU to be a spokesperson for against domestic violence. These are things that I think we as men need to start bringing to the table, because we all have a story that relates to something that is happening in our environment. So when do you have it? When do you receive that coaching? Being not a professional, and that is actually communicating. Remember we talked about and previously about the 5 love languages. So understanding what is the love language of the person or the person that you are dealing with, and that helps you to communicate better and bring things across.
So why do you think saying to another man, like you said, you read the 5 love languages. I forgot the author's name as well. But why do you think for males saying, okay, what is your love language? Taboo, right? Like me wanting to know, me being an effective communicator with you. So let's say you're my coach, right? To be an effective communicator with you, you need to know my love language. But hearing that word and saying, 2 men saying love language, why you want to know my love language? What kind of foolishness is that, right? How do we get over that I don't know how to explain. How do we get over that ego of saying that, okay, this gentleman cares for me in a platonic way?
Yes.
What is your recommendation to men and boys and young men to get over that you know, that awkwardness, right?
I see the awkwardness.
Right. Exactly right.
Well, it's okay. Look at it like this: the big brother, big brother concept.
Yeah.
Right. And there's one gentleman that always refers to any man that he speaks to as his big brother, whether he's younger or older than him. Hey, big brother, how you doing? Hey, big brother, how you doing? Now that's a concept that it speaks volume.
Yeah.
That is love, right? And you don't have to be in love with somebody to love somebody, right? So that's the taboo breaking you're talking about. So when we are looking at each other as brothers, as you know, I respect you as a brethren, then you understand that it's not about the love of a relationship wise, right? Even though for men, some men that have that, but in that concept, it is about the love that we have for each other to see good within each other, making good men better. You understand what I mean? So if you're talking with someone, you say, listen, we gotta have this discussion. I find, or we find, that what you're going through is not good. Yeah. You're drunk every day. And we would love to see that you sober up. We would love to see that you don't abuse your partner. We would love to see that you make it in society. We would love to see that you hold your head up, because there's a lot of people going around nowadays that have issues. The pandemic, as it is now, has brought even more to the foreground. So before, things that were closed doors, it become more in the face now. Yeah. The reports show for itself. I don't know the numbers exactly, but we knew that there was a rise in domestic violence during the pandemic.
Yes.
Because you close up.
Yeah.
You can't communicate. You don't know each other's love language.
Yeah.
Your partner has no clue what makes you tick, and you don't know what makes your partner tick. Yeah. So automatically the smallest could make that person flip.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the arguments, and then this, and then guess what? The youngsters are in the house. They're seeing that.
Yeah.
Is that the role model that you know? My daddy was an upstanding person until I see him flip every day.
Yeah.
And that became something of 2020 especially, that was pressing on the family household. And luckily, in today's society, we are speaking more about it as men, which is a good thing. These type of programs as well.
So to segue into something else, as a man, so I'm a young guy, right? I'm very career driven, but I have a family. And it's something I always wanted, a family. I wanted a child, etc. But the work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything such as a work-life balance as a man wanting to be career-oriented but also have a family? Because for me, I think there's a dichotomy between both of them, right?
Yeah.
It's either you do one and the other one suffers. So you do the career, but the family suffers, or you do the family and the career suffers. For you've been in the workforce for quite a long time. How have you been able to deal with being a career man, being an entrepreneur, specializing in micro business, being on so many boards, but also being a husband, being a father, being an uncle, being a brother?
Yeah, it's about balance.
Yeah,
it's about balance, and I think you mentioned it already. There's no one formula. For each will be different, but communication is key.
Yeah.
There will be sacrifices that everyone would have to make. Your choice is a sacrifice to another, or another has to sacrifice in order for you to make your choice happen, or make your goals a reality. But once you're able to balance that, life teaches us like this. There's no one moment. Time continues.
Yeah,
right? So when you're looking at things at how it is now, you need to understand that there's going to be a moment that is not this moment. And once you're able to balance that, being career oriented is a good thing. But I always say like this: what happens if your partner, your spouse, has the same vision? but you both want kids, or children, sorry, kids. You both want children in the household, and multiple, right? But nowadays, with the cost of living, the cost of daycare, or whatever have you, that's a financial strain. Yeah. So who's the one now to give up? Yeah. Who's the one now to balance their life? And that is something as a discussion between the two partners. Imagine there's only one partner in the household. Yeah. Whether or not if their mother or father is active, has an active role. But you will also so now, all of what you mentioned, you have to be, whether it's a man or woman, you have to be the caregiver, the caretaker, the daddy, the mommy, right? Yeah. And the uncle in that society, in that environment. That's about balance. And the village concept. Yeah. The village don't literally mean the village. Yeah. The village is not being afraid to call up somebody that you trust and honor and say, listen, I need help. Whether if it's physical help, mental health, right? Or just that,
So, living in St. Martin, there's a lot of male, I think there's a lot of male role models within St. Martin. And I think it's very important, especially to see young role models as well as older role models, because then you see, I'll say for example, my favorite rapper is Jay-Z, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen Jay evolve from a gangster rapper into a mogul, a billionaire. Yeah. Right? And he might be a multi-billionaire pretty soon. Right? So for me, how does a young man navigate, okay, this is the life I'm leading right now, but I might not have this goal, but I know there's something out there that I want to achieve. What would be your advice to that young man today in how to shed the bad things that are going on around his environment? Because off camera we mentioned a young man that you referred to. I'm not too sure if you're going to say his name.
I would love to say his name.
But we will say his verse, right? Yeah, so we've done stuff together where he shared his story, where he was on the road, he was doing X, Y, and Z, he was abused, and now he's, I would dare to say, an international artist right now, right? Yeah. So if you had the opportunity, and I think you've had the opportunity to speak to Verse, but if you had the opportunity to speak to Verse at age 14, what would you tell him?
Again, where you are today and what you have experienced from yesterday does not determine where you have to end up tomorrow. Yeah. You have to really understand that concept. Yet, at the same time, everything that you're doing today will make you the person that you are and can be tomorrow. Yeah. And it's your actions. For example, someone that has did things wrong in the past and ended up in the judicial system, it doesn't mean that person can't be a role model tomorrow. Yeah. And now understanding if that same person looks as himself or herself, but Dr. Men, who is himself. No, but I can't speak to young men to tell them about the good and bad of life and society because I've done bad in my life. No, you are the right person to talk to them about it. I can remember growing up, and this is a weird story. We in St. Peter there was a famous, infamous junkie. Okay. He used to break in everywhere, whatever. He was the one that showed us what was crack cocaine, what was heroin. Okay. He came on a basketball court and he opened the foil paper and he showed us. He said, youngsters, I don't take this, this is the devil. And I could remember that. I could see that was the first time. I think it was like 10, 11 maybe. One of the first time allowed to be going on the basketball court and then to be subject to that. Yeah. He could have easily said, boy, this thing is heaven. Y'all want this? And you see now, he was considered a bad person in our environment, in our society, in our community. But he did that good thing because me and my 5 or 6 friends, that remained there. And we looked at that and we said, whoa, Boy, now somebody else will say, oh, I want to sell it, I want this, I want the riches. But he was a junkie in the whole attire of being a junkie.
Yeah.
And telling us, showing us this, don't touch it, don't end up like me. So that's a role model for me at that moment, because he was showing you that you do not have to follow his path to become good tomorrow.
Do you think our judicial system has failed young men in St. Martin?
I think, and I'm going to be very careful answering this, I think that our judicial system has not evolved to deal with the societal problems that we're having now.
Yeah.
If you're looking at how the fights up in Milton Peters, back in my days, talking before in the early 90s, late 80s, there were fights every day too.
Yeah.
And the same thing, the police used to come up and you know, they are professionals and they are reactive.
Yeah.
So if we want to look at how to change, I would love to see more Big Brother activities, as I mentioned. Love the love languages. Find out what makes that young man tick.
Yeah.
Because many times it takes 2 to fight or more. But I'm being bullied, I don't react. Or I'm being challenged, I'm going to react. Or I believe that I need to dawn and press on that person in order to grow in my environment, because my peer pressure of my friends, we got to be that thing. We got to be that person. We have to be that.
Yeah.
So it's all about reaction. Now you have to break it before the reaction happens. So I'm hoping that I would love to see within the judicial system pre-programs, and that is reaching out and saying, hey, we can't make it on our own.
Yeah.
Justice is reactive, in my humble opinion. But justice, together with societal departments, need to work together. You need to have the funding for that.
Yeah.
You need to have the funding to harness good people to come and talk to, and take the regular Joes.
Yeah.
Don't take people that have not experienced what these people are talking, what these youngsters are talking about.
Yeah.
They need to have that role model to look up to and say, listen, I've been there, and don't look at this suit and tie, because I throw hands too.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to throw hands. Defend yourself, but don't react. Think twice.
Well, Benny, I'd like to thank you for your time. It was a great conversation, a very interesting conversation. I think a conversation that could last for 3-4 hours or even maybe days, because I think it is very important that our boys, young men know that society as a whole has a place for them.
Yeah.
That they are loved by their peers, they are loved by their partners, their brothers. I think it's a very important thing for us to know. Until 2019, I didn't know there was an International Men's Day. I didn't know how long there's been advocation for International Men's Day. I think it goes back into the 1960s, right? As an equality thing, right? Well, we have, because you mentioned it earlier, Mother's Day is this big day, and then Father's Day, well, hey, look at socks, big man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
I appreciate the conversation, and I hope that you continue with your men's group, and I hope it becomes bigger than what it is, because I think it's definitely needed. Because I don't really have a men's group. I just have football I go to every Sunday, and basketball I go through every Monday. So that for me is a men's group. But
Right.
we don't get the conversation, right? So I'd like to thank you. I would like to also thank Coffee Lounge for giving us this wonderful place to film this evening. And I'd like to thank our viewers for watching. I hope it was an informative session.
Reflections on the importance of male leadership in the family and society. A conversation with Benjamin Ortega and hosted by Christian Grenham has been a presentation of the Department of Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs and the Department of Communication.